The beautiful princess named Savitri was now of marriageable age, but no one had come forward to ask for her hand to marry her. Her father became anxious and arranged for her to travel throughout the local kingdoms to choose a husband for herself. She visited cities with wonderful palaces and also simple villages. But throughout her whole journey, she saw only one person who attracted her heart. Father, she explained on her return, as we passed by a hermitage in the forest, I met a handsome young man named Satyavan. I feel that I have already accepted him as my husband. The king was pleased that Savitri had someone in her mind, and he turned to the sage Narada, who was with him at that time. Have you heard of this Satyavan? Yes, indeed, Narada replied. He is the son of the deposed king Dumatsena. The poor king was blind, and his enemy took advantage of his disability to capture his country. Since he lost his kingdom, he has been living in exile in the forest with his family. I see, the king said. Narada continued, in some ways, there is no finer match for Savitri than Satyavan. He is intelligent, valiant, patient, wise, liberal, and truthful. But there is only one thing though. Tell me, the king requested. What have you to say against him? Nothing, Narada replied. Absolutely nothing. His only fault is that his life is quite short. It has been prophesied that from this date, he has only 1 year left to live. The king sat back in his throne, shocked and disappointed. He shook his head and then told his daughter, I am afraid this will not make you happy, my dear. Perhaps there was someone else you saw on your journey. Savitri bravely responded, Father, his life may be short or long. Nothing can make me waver in my decision. It is impossible for me to think of another choice, for I have already given my heart to him. The king was dejected, but nevertheless consented to the marriage arrangements. After the wedding, Savitri went to her husband's home in the forest, and she lived as an ascetic as well. She spent her days in the happy company of both her beloved husband and his parents. But she never forgot Narada's prediction and found herself counting each day as it passed. One morning, when there were only 4 days left in the year, Savitri announced to the rest of the family, I shall be observing a fast for the next 3 days. Oh, please, don't, Dumatsena begged. It is not a time of religious observances, and there is no need for additional austerities. It is already so difficult for a princess accustomed to life at court to stay in the forest. Please do not make it even more hard for yourself. But Savitri stayed firm to her decision. As she fasted, she prayed to the Lord that her husband's life to be spared. She stayed awake the entire night of the 3rd day as a vigil over her husband. In the morning, she still refused to eat anything. But why not? King Dumatsena asked. You said that your fast was to last only 3 days. I shall eat after the sun sets, Savitri answered enigmatically. At noon, Satyavan took his axe and prepared to go into the forest. He was halfway down the path when he realized Savitri was following him. What are you doing? He asked. You have never accompanied me to the forest before. I want to come with you today, Savitri said. But you have been fasting, Satyavan commented. Surely, you must be weak. Not in the least, Savitri insisted. Don't prevent me from coming with you. And she implored Dumatsena, please tell your son to let me accompany him. The blind king said, My son, this is a fair request from your wife. Why not fulfill her wishes? Together, they went deep into the forest. After spending some time gathering fruits and roots, Satyavan began to cut firewood. Savitri sat nearby and watched him closely. The work was exerting and Satyavan was perspiring. Then his axe stroke faltered and he exclaimed, My vision is blurring and I feel a tremendous headache. Come and take rest, Savitri requested. You are working too hard. But it was too late, for the axe fell from Satyavan's hand. His legs gave away. Savitri rushed to catch him and she laid his head in her lap. Looking to the heavens, Savitri called out to the Lord, Please do not let my husband to be taken from me. He is a righteous man and I love him dearly. Please let his life be saved. As Savitri sat down in the dense forest stroking Satyavan's feverish brow, a large dark figure ominously approached. He was dressed in blood-red garments and carried a rope and a club in his hands. His gaze was fixed on Satyavan and he totally ignored Savitri. Savitri deduced that it was Yama, the personification of death, but she boldly challenged him. "Who are you? What is your business here?" This startled Yama as he was not accustomed to being questioned. He replied, "I am Yama and I have come to take away your husband because his span of life on earth has ended." Yama cast his rope around Satyavan's soul and bound it in the noose. He then began to drag it behind as he walked away towards the south. Savitri stared for a moment at the lifeless body of her husband lying in her lap. Then she stood up and followed Yama. "What are you doing?" Yama said. "You cannot follow me. Go back and conduct your husband's funeral." Savitri, however, had no intention of leaving Satyavan. "I have lived a life of a virtuous wife," she said. "Therefore, I have certain rights. I deserve to be in the company of my husband." Yama stopped and said, "I am afraid that is no longer possible. But because your devotion to Satyavan, I cannot send you back empty-handed. You may ask me for a boon, anything except your husband's life." Savitri thought for a moment and said, "Let King Dumatsena regain his eyesight." "So be it," said Yama. "Now please return home." Yet Savitri would not turn back. She insisted on following Yama. "Don't you understand?" Yama said. "I am taking your husband's soul to my court where I will decide his next birth." "Yes, I know that," Savitri said. "It is my duty to follow my husband wherever he goes. If his soul is to go with you, then allow my soul also to go there." "All things must take their course at proper time," Yama said. "You must remain behind." "But it is the duty of the great to protect all those who seek assistance," Savitri said. "What you are asking is impossible," Yama sighed. Never before had he witnessed such commitment. "I cannot allow you to come with me any further, but I will offer you another boon." Savitri again reflected before requesting, "Allow my father-in-law to regain his lost kingdom." Yes, Yama said. "That shall also happen. Now, please go back." Yama walked on, but Savitri continued to follow behind her husband. After a few minutes, Yama looked back over his shoulder and saw the indomitable Savitri still behind. "Listen," he said in the exasperation. "You positively cannot come any step further. I am taking Satyavan to a dark and terrible place. You don't belong in that realm of death." Savitri smiled. "A wife's rightful place is by her husband's side. I will be happy to go with Satyavan. You have no right to prevent me from performing my duty as a loyal wife." The personification of death then said, "O noble and virtuous lady, your chastity astounds me. Because you are willing to follow your husband even in his death, I shall offer you one final boon. But do not even think of asking for Satyavan's life." Savitri then thought for a while and eventually said, "If by your previous boons my father-in-law has regained his sight and kingdom, then all I now ask is that he may see my son raised as the future king." Thinking only of how to pacify her, Yama readily agreed to such a simple request. "Now, please, you must return home," he pleaded. "I have done all I can for you." However, Savitri sweetly said to him, "Thank you for all your benedictions, but how am I to have a son? You are surely not suggesting that I find another partner when I am still in the company of my beloved husband, Satyavan." Yama dropped the rope, realizing the consequences of his promise. "My dear lady," he said, "you have defeated me. Indeed, I must return the life of your husband to fulfill this boon. Moreover, I am extremely pleased with the love and devotion you have displayed for your husband. All of us must face the consequences of our individual actions and accept the destiny we create for ourselves. But by the goodness of a pure soul, the Lord may intervene and adjust the circumstances. I can now see that God wishes to bestow a long and happy life for you both." Yama then disappeared. Savitri returned to Satyavan's body in the forest and laid his head on her lap. She fanned him with her sari, reciting prayers of thanksgiving until Satyavan regained consciousness.